If there's one thing in life that I have consistently applied myself in and yet not made the progress I wanted to, it's fitness and physique. I'm glad to say that I'm finally making some meaningful progress, and here's what I did differently. What's going on, guys? For those of you who are new here, my name is Kevin Jubal, physician entrepreneur based in Las Vegas and formerly training in plastic surgery. So let's first start off with my relationship with fitness and my past history. So I first got really into, I'd say, weight training and more so bodybuilding back in high school. Like a lot of young guys, I obsessed over researching diets and workout plans and techniques and just trying to, get all this information in my head. In college, I got more into it, but more so from the powerlifting perspective, and I was focused on the 4 main compound lifts, being squats, deadlifts, bench, and overhead press. Now I am 6'1", and at the peak of this powerlifting phase, I got up to 170 pounds. I was a lot stronger than I am now, but I also had a bit more fat. In medical school, I was definitely pretty regular in the first 2 years, but less about powerlifting, more just about general maintenance of my health and being physically capable. I wanted to go to the driving range, play golf from time to time, or go cycle. I just wanted to be healthy and feel good. But in the last 2 years of medical school, those clinical years, definitely was not consistent. I was working, as many med students do, working really long hours and wasn't able to go to the gym every single day. Now in residency, more of the same. I was doing plastic surgery residency plus running 2 businesses, which I definitely wouldn't recommend. And I was very inconsistent with my exercise as a result. Probably went to the gym 3 times a week, if that. Now I feel like fitness has been a source of frustration because for most other things in my life, whether it's track driving and becoming a better driver, or whether it's academic and studying, or getting better with surgery techniques and suturing and tying knots, I feel like with consistent effort, I was able to make a lot of progress. But with fitness, I feel like I've been spinning my wheels and staying in place for the most part. And admittedly, my goals have changed over the years. So again, in college, it was primarily powerlifting. In medical school, I transitioned more to like a bodybuilding type routine and focus. Now, in terms of my current goal, I want to get to 185 pounds at 10% body fat. I have a ways to go because I'm at 150 right now at 12.5% body fat. Now, this isn't going to happen in the next year or 2. This is going to be a long-term goal, long-term process, but I think that weight is much healthier on this frame. And then you'll also note that the goal is very much focused on the physique rather than having the strength goals that I used to have in college. So what has changed in the last several years? The main thing is that last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic, I got a virtual fitness coach. And this is something that I've been very hesitant to do. I've never had a personal trainer before. I never paid anyone to tell me what to do in the gym because I felt like it's pretty simple. I could figure this out myself. If you're watching this, you're probably a reasonably intelligent person that, whether you're trying to get into medical school or whatever, you can handle figuring out an exercise routine. It can't be that hard, right? But then I realized, well, Kevin, you've been trying to do this for years and you haven't made the progress that you wanted. So let's try something different. Let's try to hire a professional. And the other thing is I've been leaning more into this idea of barbell spending, whereby you save a lot of money and you're very frugal with the things you don't care about, but with the things that are important to you, and fitness is one of those things, then you spend a lot of money there, you spend heavily. So I figured I'd try a coach. And so far it has been working. So this is a virtual coach, right? So the arrangement is such that I get workouts prescribed by him for every day of the week or every weekday. And in return, once a week, I will then update him on the results. So he can see the actual workouts in terms of the sets and reps and the weights, but then also I'll update him on my sleep, on my body fat, on my weight, on my steps and activities, and various metrics that are useful. Now there's a handful of benefits. The first being accountability. Ever since hiring him, and because I'm paying money, right? I've only missed a handful of workouts in the last year. I've been very, very consistent. And number 2 is delegation. So rather than spending time figuring out what I'm gonna do, doing some research, tweaking this, tweaking that, he's the expert. He does this full time. He knows more than I do. I can just have him handle everything, and then I just go in and work out and do what I'm prescribed. And then the other thing is that I do have some older injuries that he's helping me work around with various like rehab exercises and techniques that I wasn't aware of in my own research, but he's aware of and is showing me these new things that have been helping. All right, so let's look at some results. Now, this is my iPhone health app, and this is what keeps track of essentially all my health metrics, my body weight, body fat, etc. And I use the Withings Body Plus scale, which I've talked about in a previous video. Before February of 2020, I was using a different scale, which wasn't very accurate, which is why it was going up and down a lot. And that one was also giving me an ego boost giving me a lower body fat percentage than I really am. So since February, you'll see that I was hovering around 13 to 14% body fat. And then it consistently rose up until August, where I peaked at 15.3%. The main reason being that with lockdown, gyms were closed, right? So I'm working out at home, I'm doing like band exercises and bodyweight stuff, which for me, it's harder to get to that same level of intensity. I was doing time restricted feeding, but I think the activity level was just a lot lower because not only was I not working out, but I was barely leaving the apartment, and my step count and just like the average number of calories I burned per day was a lot lower. In August, started hitting the gym more, started also being like, whoa, this is getting kind of out of hand. I need to tighten down. And I've been steadily decreasing my body fat ever since. And this month in March, as I record it, I'm currently at 12.7%. All right, now at this point, most people, including myself, are thinking, hold up, 6'1", 150 pounds, why in the world are you cutting? You should be bulking way before you try cutting at that weight. And I initially agreed with you, and that's what I told my coach. I was like, hold up, dude, I need to be gaining some mass right now. And there's two reasons. So number one is injury prevention. Because we're not pushing the weights as heavily and progressing as quickly as we would during a bulking phase, I'm able to have lighter weights. Now this is important to prevent injury because I have some limited mobility with my thoracic spine or my hips. And whenever in the past I would push the weights, then I would start having these nagging pains here and there. So that's number one. And then number two, he points out that a lot of people, if they're starting off at a higher baseline body fat percentage and they start bulking, I mean, you're going to gain some fat, right? It's very difficult to have a 100% clean bulk where you only gain muscle and no fat. So if you start at a higher baseline and you bulk, then you're gonna get to that point where maybe you're like, this is getting out of hand, and then you actually hinder your own bulk efficacy. So things that I found helpful in this cutting phase. First of all, I think it's better to be slow and steady rather than trying to lose a lot of fat really quickly. So as you can see, 15.3 in August down to 12.7 now in March. That's slow, right? That's not super fast, but I think slow and steady and being consistent is more important than yo-yoing and going, losing a lot of fat and then gaining some of it back and going back and forth. Now I have been doing time restricted feeding. Some people call this intermittent fasting, which is somewhat of a misnomer, but the idea is that you restrict the time you eat every day. And that's a very easy way, I think, to limit the number of total calories. So initially I was doing from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. was my feeding window. That's 8 hours, and then 16 hours of not eating. Nowadays it's actually probably closer to 12 to 5 or 6 p.m. most days. So a little bit of a tighter window. And I find that I feel hungry. Like right now it's almost noon and I'm feeling hungry now, but in the morning I feel totally fine. And then usually after I have dinner, I'm also totally fine. It keeps it more manageable rather than feeling constantly hungry the whole day, in my experience. Now I also do intermittent water only fasts, and I do these usually once every 2 months. This is where I'm eating nothing and I'm only having water. I have noticed though that electrolyte supplementation is key. It makes the whole process way more painless. I don't really do this primarily for weight loss, right? I actually do this more for longevity and autophagy, those benefits, but it does help with cutting fat because your body is burning fat as fuel while you're not eating anything. Some people get concerned that I would lose muscle if I did this, right? But from the evidence, it appears that if I am staying active and then also maintaining that water only fast for a couple days, then I'm not gonna lose any muscle mass. Another thing I was doing was actually tracking my food intake, tracking your macros. And I used my MyFitnessPal as well as Chronometer. Both were good, both were fine. What both my coach and I feel is that tracking every single day for like weeks and months is probably not the best thing because you may develop an unhealthy relationship with food, and it just adds this extra point of friction where you're more likely to get fed up, get annoyed by having to measure and weigh every time you eat, and forget this, right? So the key here is having sustainable long-term behavior change rather than trying to do all these things at once and then burning out and just giving it all up. So the way we approached it is tracking food intake for a couple days at a time. So at the beginning, right, I may track my food intake for 3 days or a week, and then just kind of get an idea of my macros. How many calories am I taking in total? How much of that is protein versus carbs versus fats? And then after a couple months, I may do that again for a few days, and I can just repeat that as needed. And then the last thing that was super clutch is just accountability. And I feel like I'm the kind of person that can usually stick to habits and stick to my systems, but I was surprised how there are times when I was like, hey man, let's get off this cutting thing, let's just start bulking. And he helped keep me on track. Said, hey, no, we need to get down to 10%. and then we'll do the fun stuff, which is bulking. And speaking of accountability, that brings us to Noom, the sponsor of today's video. Working with a virtual fitness coach has been an awesome experience, but it is really expensive. I spend a few $100s every single month, and that's not something that a lot of people can justify. What's unique about Noom is that they're not a diet app, but rather a comprehensive behavior change solution to weight loss. The problem with a lot of these online subscription-based weight loss services is that they try to use a very simple one-size-fits-all or very minimally customized kind of solution. But with Noom, you do an online evaluation to create a custom program best suited for you. Again, getting into shape isn't about having this massive burst of inspiration and motivation and then putting in a lot of hard work. It's all about having these sustainable behavior changes over longer periods of time. Again, that's the compounding effect that I talk about so much on this channel. So you need to know, number one, what behavior changes are necessary and are actually helpful for you getting closer to your goal. And then number two, are you able to be consistent with them over time? And Noom helps you with both. They use scientific behavior change principles to help you know what it is you need to do to actually lose weight. But more importantly, stick with those habits over a longer period of time. So looking at their app, you can easily track your food with their extensive food database. And if you're doing time-restricted feeding, like I am, you can actually use their app to set meal reminders. That way you actually stick within your designated feeding window. And you guys know how much I love mindfulness, and they even have a mindfulness curriculum built into their app. One of the key lessons I've learned with my own fitness journey is that trying to do it on your own is much less likely to work rather than when you have help. And with Noom, you definitely get that support. You have a personal goal specialist and group chat, so you get that support you need and that accountability to keep you on track over the long term. So get started with Noom today. Try out their 30-second quiz using the link in the description. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, check out my video on time-restricted feeding and intermittent fasting. Much love, and I'll see you guys there.